Hey everybody, welcome to the GMG review. Today we're taking a look at Zone Mortalis, the sort of skirmish combined boarding action games for Warhammer the Horus Heresy that came out in White Dwarf 477. Now why are we looking at this? Well, I'll be honest, some of my favorite games of the first edition of Horus Heresy were Zone Mortalis games. And a lot of the warfare that happens in the Horus Heresy is in these confined spaces, orbital plates, various spaceship boarding actions. There's tons of great examples of battles fought by just small forces that have a big impact on the overall campaign. And I'm really excited the Games Workshop put out, I think, what looks like a preliminary version of the rules in White Dwarf 477. So basically allowing the game to be played at that level as a supplement released in their monthly magazine. So, what do we got here? Well, the game is designed to be played on a Zone Mortalis table. What that means is basically the interior of a starship or the underground like of Calth after the Ruin Storm gets launched, where you're fighting in a confined space. In order to do so, there's some modifications to the core rules, and even your list construction to represent the fact that you can't just drive a glaive down there or walk a Night Titan down there to have those games. So it uses its own detachment, its force organization chart, and is actually playable at much smaller sizes, which I think is super cool, down to a 2x2 table, up to a 4x6 table if you're playing 2,000 to 3,000 points. So you could play a full 3,000 point Horus Heresy game, but you can play all the way down to 500 to 1,000 points. And I think that's where we're going to start. We're going to start at probably a 1,000 point game on a 3x3 board. So, force selection. Each force in a Zone Mortalis game is selected using the regular rules in the Horus Heresy Age of Darkness rulebook. A legions and army lists are selected by the player. However, for most Zone Mortalis battles, only the Zone Mortalis Assault Force organization chart here should be used. When you select your force, no unit may be greater than 15 models, so no giant units. If its minimum size is greater, then they can't be chosen. Note this restriction only applies to individual units during army selection. Models with special rules, such as the Apothecarian attachment that are assigned, and independent characters that join units could take them above 15. No unit can have a dedicated transport. No models with the Armiger and or vehicle unit types can be chosen. And no model with the Dreadnought or Automata unit type or the Monstrous subtype can be chosen if it has wounds characteristic of 7 or more. So no Leviathans, no big giant super units, no greater demons. And no models with the anti-grav unit subtype may be chosen either, nothing that floats. You could take bikes though, which I think is neat, racing bikes underground. Warlords, when choosing your army, you must nominate one model to be your warlord. However, the guidelines represented on page 284 of the Age of Darkness rulebook, you may not choose a warlord trait for your warlord in games with a maximum point value of 500 points or fewer, so no warlords in small games. And you can only have one warlord trait, no matter how many you can have. And as far as reactions go, nothing ever gives you more than one reaction per phase. No more than that. Base reaction allotment, additional reactions, and reaction limits in smaller games. If it's 1,000 points or less, you only ever get one. Reactions are their own little Zone Mortalis reactions. So in the movement phase, you can suppress. During the movement phase, reactive player may declare a reaction. And these are basically available to all factions. Suppress, the unit makes a shooting attack targeting that triggered unit, the unit that triggered this reaction, following all the rules for a shooting attack. Unit that makes a shooting attack as part of a suppressed reaction may not make any attacks indirectly, and all shooting attacks made as part of a suppressed reaction are snapshots, with the exception of template weapons that use the Wall of Death, and this prevents weapons that are blast from being used. Models in the reacting unit count as stationary during the shooting phase, even if they moved the previous movement phase. Reaction in the shooting phase, displace. Each model in the reacting unit may move a number of inches up to their unmodified initiative. When resolving the shooting attack that triggered this reaction, all range and line of sight is measured from the reacting unit's new position. If as a result, then they can't be shot at. If you can't see them anymore, then you can't shoot them. So it's interesting because they basically flip return fire for suppress and advance and retreat for displace. The idea being that you're playing in this like really closely confined space, and people creeping up on you are going to get blasted at short range, less effectively probably than normally. And when you're about to be shot at during the shooting phase, you can duck back behind cover. Reaction in the assault phase is brace. The reacting unit makes a morale check. If the check has failed, the reacting unit immediately falls back d6 inches and automatically regroups when it's done. If the check is successful, the reacting player automatically passes any morale checks they're required to make as a result of losing an assault during the following fight subphase. So before you resolve your charge roll, you brace. You fall back and automatically count as rallying. and then you get to automatically pass any morale check that you make. So you basically reorganize yourself. So if you get caught out during a charge, you could maybe make the charge fail, but you can also make yourself immune to any morale checks. And then terrain in Zone Mortalis, designating the Zone Mortalis terrain, designating ceiling, so how high a ceiling is. A lot of the like Forge World Zone Mortalis terrain had like consistent ceiling heights, but the Necromunda stuff, if you're using it, can have multi-levels. You just need to be aware of where the ceiling is and what you can see through. Designating access points like doors and stuff and how they work, moving through terrain. Terrain pieces like columns and walls, doors, standard doors and wide doors, and they can be state and controlled. Door can either be closed or open, unless stated otherwise, all doors start closed. And then open doors do not block line of sight and can be moved through them freely. Controls, depending on the mission, a door may be accessible, locked, or controlled. In some missions, some or all doors are controlled by one or more players. So these are future-proofing. There isn't really that many rules in the core mission. Model behind a cover of a column or wall is a 5+ cover save. And then destroying doors, you can shoot them. They have a armor value of 10, and standard doors have 3 hull points, wide doors have 6 hull points. However, when a penetrating hit is inflicted on a door, it loses D3 hull points, and no roll for the building damage table is made. Ladders and stairways, you can just move up and down them, hazardous terrain. And this would allow you to use all the tiles from Necromunda too if you wanted to, with like the hazardous terrain things on them, with all the cool like melty goo. And then shooting in hazardous terrain, you're -1 to hit. Most of the Primarch unit type or night vision don't suffer from this penalty because of the smoke, you just ignore it. And then core Zone Mortalis rules. Barrage weapons. You can't fire them through a ceiling. Objective markers. Zone Mortalis use the rules for objective markers, with one major exception. Unless stated otherwise, in specific mission, a unit must have at least one model from a scoring unit in base contact with an objective marker in order to control it. So you can't just stand next to it, you have to be in base contact. Reserves. Models held in reserve can only enter the battlefield via designated access points. And then Deep Strike in Zone Mortalis. If the battlefield has a ceiling, models cannot arrive via Deep Strike. If the battlefield does not have a ceiling, units may deploy via Deep Strike using the normal rules. And then Firestorm and Shrapnel. So Blast X or template weapons gain the +1 to any 2 wound rolls made in Zone Mortalis, basically because you're confined with an explosion, or flame templates, you get +1 to wound with them. In addition, if the battlefield has a ceiling, blast markers can't scatter through columns, walls, or whatever. They just stop when they hit it. Nowhere to hide. The victorious side always gets +1 to sweeping advance, and contrary to the rules for falling back, immediately on a failed morale check, the unit's first fallback move is directly away from the enemy. Subsequent moves are then towards the nearest access point. And then Blind Panic. If any model from a unit that's falling back ends its move or passes within 1 inch of any model from another friendly unit, that unit must immediately make a morale check. Fearless units are not subject to this. Basically, if you run away or run through a unit while you're fleeing, you can panic them and make them run too. And then the core mission. There's only 1 mission in here, but this makes me hopeful there's going to be more because there's lots of stuff referred to that aren't necessarily used in this. You've got Force the Breach. Within the wilding tunnels of a Zone Mortalis, holding ground and maintaining control of vital positions can mean the difference between success and failure, life and death. The Force the Breach mission represents a force defending, fighting to maintain control in the face of an attacking enemy. This is an example of the sort of missions, but future publications can include a variety of missions for Zone Mortalis battles. You must assign the role of attacker and defender, using the Zone Mortalis rules for creating your army, determine the ceiling. The players determine if the battlefield will have a ceiling or not, either by mutual consent or by rolling off, place columns and walls, place doors, place remaining terrain, and you build the Zone Mortalis while you're playing, which I think is cool. Then deployment. Before the battle begins, both players must decide and divide their armies into 2 separate units, either spearhead and reserve. The battlefield is divided into quarters, quadrant 1, quadrant 2, and they're basically deployed back and forth. Objective markers can't be deployed within 6 of the center of the battlefield. And before play begins, the defender places 3 objective markers, 1 in their own deployment zone, 1 in each of the zones that neither player is deployed in their standard deployment. The player who deploys first also has the first turn, unless they seize. After 4 turns, roll a dice, on a 4+, a 5th and final game turn is played. And then victory conditions. The Zone Mortalis Force the Breach represents a defender trying to maintain hold of a vital area. And it's primary objective Force the Breach. At the start of each turn, the current active player gains 1 victory point for each objective marker they control. These victory points are kept even if the objective is lost later in the battle and contribute to the player's victory point total at the end of the game. And then Slay the Warlord. If a side destroyed the enemy warlord, they get +1, and if it's a Primarch, an additional 1. And Attrition, the army with the highest destroyed number of units, which has destroyed the highest number of enemy units at the end of the game, gains additional VP. And then Mission Special Rules, Reserves. So that's it. Hold table quarters. And you could have doors and stuff too, but no one's designated as having held them. Starting with the defender, the players must take turns placing doors, either standard, wide, or wide. Once at least 3 doors have been placed, the players can choose to place no more, and then you're done placing one final door. And that's it. So I'm pumped. I'm actually really excited to play some Zone Mortalis. I think at 500 and 1,000 points, it would be a great thing to play games with your allied force if you're making one. I'm excited for like the different reactions. I'm excited to paint my Zone Mortalis stuff. I have a plastic set from Necromunda, but I also have tons of great MDF stuff from Death Ray Designs that I'll use probably initially on a gaming mat. And probably start off with 3x3. I think it'd be great to play smaller point games, playing 1,000 point games on a 3x3 mat, and then just like trying it out on a different table size. Because so far, we've only played on 6x4 tables. So I feel like playing a more intimate, smaller game with like some really nicely painted models would be a lot of fun. And so I'm excited this is in here. This was like a kind of a refreshing treat to get like a cool supplement like this in White Dwarf 477. I think most people bought it for the Index Hereticus World Eaters. I bought it for the Zone Mortalis rules for Horus Heresy. So I'm excited for more to come. I hope they keep expanding this because I think that Zone Mortalis is just a great way to play Horus Heresy and a very different GW game in general because it's more skirmishy, but playing with like armies, 40k armies. And it's just a cool variation. More ways to play. I'm excited about it. So big thanks for watching. We'll see you for more GMG reviews. Till then, Ash. Have a good day. Hey there, I hope you enjoyed that video. There are tons of other games already recorded for you to watch. Click over to my channel page if you haven't already, and have a look to the dozens of playlists full of videos. I guarantee you'll discover a game you haven't seen played before. I put out new videos 7 days a week, and every day is themed to a different genre as I continue to explore the wider world of gaming. Of course, none of that's possible without you, the viewer, so click a like and subscribe if you'd like to stay on top of what's happening here daily. My 2 kids and I are massively grateful to be able to have the flexibility of this job so I can always maximize my time with them. If you want to support me continuing to put out this content, it's only possible because of my amazing backers on Patreon who support the studio, equipment, and model cost, as well as being how I make the bulk of my living. You can also help out by buying a t-shirt through Spreadshirt, a measuring gauge or widget from Death Ray Designs, or buying one of my games and supplements like Last Days, Gamma Wolves, and Blaster. As a way of showing my appreciation, patrons get early access to new games and supplements that I write throughout the course of the year. Huge thanks for watching, it really does help out, and happy gaming.